Memorial, your community was selected out of over 100 communities that applied to bring the wall this year. Your community worked hard. This is not about us, the nonprofit. This is about your community, to bring that healing, to bring that education to those that can't make it to Washington, D.C. Today you get the honor of escorting the names of those men and women that didn't come home, to honor those men and women that served in the country of Vietnam and never had that welcome home ceremony. We're going to end up in Covington after the escort. At that time, we will then park this trailer, speak briefly. We're going to open up the sides of this trailer. You're going to get the opportunity, the first ones in your community, to see some of the displays that we're going to be bringing out this week. Starting tomorrow morning at 0800, 8 a.m., we will start the assembly of that 3/4 scale replica. It will then be set up.
That's the main reason, but that's it, and thank you.
can, please stand. Presenting the colors of the United States of America, the American flag, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Hopkins. He served in Vietnam from 1967 to 68 as a captain. Colonel Hopkins. Carrying the flag of the United States Army, Grover Nicely, who deployed to Vietnam in August of 1969. He was combat wounded in October and returned to the States in November of 69. He was a PFC, Private First Class. Representing the United States Marine Corps, Ronnie Hancock. He was called to service and deployed to Vietnam in 1968 and returned home in 1969. He was a private first class. The United States Navy, Dennis Bussey, deployed to Vietnam in 1969 and served through 1970. He was a lieutenant junior grade. The U.S. Air Force, Dale Comer, served from 1971 to 72. He was a staff sergeant. With the colors of the U.S. Coast Guard, Cliff Hall, served in Vietnam from 1968 to 69 as a petty officer, 3rd class.
The POA MIA table. It's a place setting for one, but a table for all. A little known tradition to the outside civilian world, the white table originated during the time of the Vietnam War. It was a symbol for and remembrance to service members held prisoner of war or missing in action. Solidarity and solemn. It is a table where no one will ever sit. The original table was set by the Red River Valley Fighter Pilots Association, or the River Rats, to remember those who did not return. The tradition of setting a separate table in honor of our prisoners of war and missing comrades has been in place since the end of the Vietnam War. The manner in which the table is decorated is full of symbols to help us remember our brothers and sisters in arms. The table is smaller than others, symbolizing the family of one prisoner alone against his or her oppressors. The white tablecloth draped over the table represents the purity of our response to our country's call to arms. The empty chair depicts an unknown face, representing no specific soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine, but all who are not home with us. The Bible represents faith in a higher power and the pledge to our country, founded as our nation under God. The Round Table shows that our concern for them is never ending. The black napkin stands for the emptiness these warriors have left in the hearts of their families and friends. The single red rose reminds us of the families and loved ones. The red ribbon represents the love of our country, which inspired them to answer the nation's call. The yellow candle and its ribbon symbolize the everlasting hope for a joyous reunion with those yet accounted for. The slices of lemon on the bread plate reminds us of their bitter fate. The salt upon the bread plate represents the tears of their families. The inverted wine glass reminds us that our distinguished comrades cannot be with us to drink a toast or join in the festivities of today. You are not forgotten so long as there is one left in whom your memory remains. I welcome you, when this is over, to come up and look more closely at the table to see the elements that I just described.
And while he found that job mentally very, very challenging in the days before GPS, he yearned for something different. He wanted to be in control of the aircraft. So he applied to become a pilot, and he transitioned from multi-engined aircraft to a fighter pilot. He flew for 17 years. He served in peacetime, both overseas as well as stateside. But the epitome of his military career occurred in 1967 to 1968 when he flew out of Benoit Airfield in South Vietnam. He flew an astounding 303 combat missions, many of which were in close support of ground troops. Now, the neighborhoods at that time over South Vietnam didn't particularly welcome aircraft flying low over their neighborhoods, and they tended to shoot at you. So he was in peril every time he went up. He was recognized by receiving the Silver Star, one of our highest awards for gallantry in this country. He also received 3 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 16 Air Medals, and the South Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry. He has enough citations and memorabilia to wallpaper a house. After the war, he has served in a variety of spheres associated with veterans, including being the commander of Veterans Post 1499, and also as the president of the Military Officers Association of America Post in Lexington, Virginia. He currently resides in Lexington, Virginia, with his wife of over 63 years, Gladys. Gladys is an absolute dynamo, and I can assure you, in his household, he is outranked by his commander-in-chief. I want to finish by saying that we commonly use the terms heroic in this country. Heroic oftentimes refers to a singular event. Somebody jumps into the raging waters in North Carolina to rescue somebody. Someone who goes into a burning building. Those events are admirable and wonderful. But true heroism to me implies putting yourself at risk day after day after day after day. And for some, putting yourself at risk results in the ultimate sacrifice, as exemplified by the 58,000 plus names on the wall. Those who served in Vietnam, on the ground, above the ground, and in the waters in and around South Vietnam also displayed that type of heroism. So I want to present to you one of the many heroes of the Vietnam War, my friend, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Hopkins.
I won't bother to try and acknowledge all the people that put together this event because they've already been acknowledged. But I would like to just say one thing, that I am very pleased to be back amongst a bunch of veterans like I see out here in the audience today. Probably the youngest of the Vietnam vets now is 75 years old. And I beat that by 10 years myself. But we're still here, but let's not forget about the other 58,000 guys that are over my left shoulder here that didn't make it back. I'm sure you all know a few of them. What I'd like to do today is I'll tell you about a couple of missions, a couple of events that happened to me while I was in Vietnam. If you've been in the military, and for those of you who haven't, you might get a kick out of this, but when you go through basic training, that's like the first 12 weeks or so that you're in the military, the sergeants and officers don't intentionally tell you this, but they kind of give you the impression that whatever branch of the military that you're in is the best. The rest of them don't know what they're doing, and you know, if you're the Air Force, you've got it made, and so on. And what do those Army guys know, and Navy and Marine Corps guys? If they were so smart, they'd be in the Air Force, right? But I learned something when I got to Vietnam. I got over there in the fall of 1967. I was the pilot of a single-seat, single-engine jet fighter bomber called the F-100 Super Sabre. I had all of 120 hours of flight time in that airplane, and this was my first assignment as a fighter pilot. So I'd flown a few missions over there, and I was really starting to settle in. Our primary mission that we had was close air support for the ground troops. And how many Army guys are out there in the audience? Raise your hand, please, if you were a grunt. There's a few of you out there. Well, they call them grunts because they're on the ground carrying 80-pound packs on their back, and it makes them grunt a little bit when they're going uphill or trying to swim through a rice paddy. But anyway, so our job, my job as a F-100 pilot, was to provide close air support. And when the ground troops got in trouble, real big trouble, because they like to take care of their own problems if they could, and sometimes, I'm sorry to say, they waited longer than they should have, but they would call for air support. In those days, there was no GPS, and you know, for like smart bombs that would, you know, you could put them through a window from 20 miles away. They were so accurate, but we didn't have that. And so in order to be as accurate as possible and put down ordnance as close as we could to the friendly troops, or, you know, to take care of the bad guys but not hit the friendly troops, you had to be as low and as fast as possible. And when I mean low, and one of the weapons that we carried a lot of was napalm. Napalm is jellied gasoline, and it came in a canister that weighed about 900 pounds. And when you drop that, one can of napalm would cover an entire football field with this jellied gasoline. It was a very effective weapon. It was so effective that I don't think we even use it anymore, but I'm telling you, it was effective. The optimum delivery mode for napalm for us was 50 feet above the ground at 500 miles an hour. and we usually drop the napalm in pairs. So, bombing. Normally you think of a bombing would be like a dive bombing in World War II. You dive maybe in a 30-degree dive angle, but you release the bombs way up there at 3,000 feet. And the wind has a long time to affect the trajectory of the bomb, which decreases its accuracy. So they came up with what they called high drag bombs that had big fins that would open on the back of them, and we could drop those in a dive, shallow dive, from about 900 feet, and the bomb would slow down and give us enough room to get away from the bomb blast. So anyway, that's the type of things we did. We also had cannons, and we could strafe, and I know we did good for the guys on the ground when we were called there, but one day, oh, you just said that's the flyover right there. One day after I'd flown, we had a little base exchange at this base I was at, and it wasn't a very big building, maybe 20 or 30 feet square, and it had toiletry items and a few canned goods and very basic things. And I didn't have anything to do that day after I'd flown, so I went over and I wandered around in this little exchange, and I didn't see anything in there that I wanted, so I came back out, and there was a little front porch, and I was standing on the front porch, and as I did, I saw two Army grunts, young guys, probably in their late teens, coming up towards this little exchange. Their uniforms were ripped. They had red welts and scratches all over them. They were filthy dirty. And I suppose they had just come out of a jungle environment for the last few weeks. And I stood there looking at these guys and followed them visually into this little exchange. And they came out about 5 or 10 minutes later, and each one of them had a can of boned chicken. And they were eating that chicken like it was a Thanksgiving dinner. And I said to myself, this is the guys that I'm providing close air support to. And my opinion of them went from here to here. And from that day on, I never at all questioned risking my life to help those poor guys on the ground.
Test 2.
Mark time, march, detail, halt, inward, face, retrieve, colors, carry, colors, outward, face, forward, march, left, right, 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 left.